Secretary, before we start, I know you've been very busy forming programs, especially for assisting distressed workers abroad. But can we start with the policy? I was watching some of your interviews before, and you were talking about, I think with Malu Mangahas, some of the things you want to happen. Well, you didn't want intergenerational OFWs, but at the same time, you seem to be, I'm putting words in your mouth here, you seem to be worried about putting restrictions on deployment, because you said that if you do that, then many of them will go the illegal recruitment's way. So what is the Marcos policy with regard to OFW deployment? Is it status quo? Is it to exit at some point, or is something else altogether?
Well, for us, in this administration, it's quite clear. Local employment is still the
that's the
first.
priority.
Yes, it's the priority. It's the most desired way for our compatriots, no, to consider and to live by. But having said that, we all know that people go where the jobs are, and it's the work of the Department of Migrant Workers to strengthen migration governance and make sure that if they do leave the country, it's in the most protected way. If they are being recruited, it's a rights-based approach, and that there is also a clear pathway for those returning so that they can be included in the mainstream of society.
Reintegrated. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It seems like you're, based on what I've seen in the news, you're quite busy with setting up programs to help distressed OFWs. I think you've mentioned the One Repatriation Center being among them. Can you talk about this?
Yes, even before I was appointed, Klink, you know that I headed my own NGO, the Toots Ople Policy Center, and our main mission then, and even now because it continued to exist, was to help distressed OFWs, especially victims of human trafficking. And one thing that we observed was usually the parents would find ways to make utang, and even sell something. Oo, para lang bumiyahe mula probinsya to Metro Manila and knock on doors of different agencies para sabihin na ginugulpi anak ko, or stranded yung anak ko, wala na makain, gusto nang umuwi. So, and I noticed that, and that's what I wanted to correct.
Okay.
So we decided with my team at the Department of Migrant Workers, why not put up a command center that will handle all these requests? So yung families of distressed OFWs, they just need to call 1348. That is the hotline of the...
Wherever they are in the Philippines?
Yes. Okay. And for those outside the country, or even those in the country, they can also send an email to repat@dmw.gov.ph. And then we have a team that includes nurses for medical repatriation, labor attachés who are now on home detail, and we also have people from the POEA, from OWA. So it's a composite team that's now taking in and processing all these requests. It's being encoded, and we have an e-care system developed by OWA, so we can monitor the progress. There's an aging notification system. Pag hindi gumagalaw and no one from the post has been reporting on the progress, we get to know about it.
Oh, I see. So there's a monitoring system.
Yes, and then there's a separate team na walang ginagawa kundi just to update the family.
Okay.
So we are hopeful that as we, right now it's early stages yet, no, but we've already received mga 1,000 requests for repatriation, mostly via email.
Wow.
So we are thinking that if we start opening this, na may Instagram, meron siyang sa Facebook, of course. So using all the social platforms, I'm sure mas marami pa yan. That eliminates the burden on a, very anxious mom o yung mga anxious na pamilya na kailangan pang mangutang para pumunta na Maynila.
Or just to follow up, ano?
Yes, oo.
The other thing that you seem to be streamlining, well, at least according to the President's State of the Nation address, the bureaucracy, the manuals, I think he mentioned reducing the number of pages. Can you talk about that? I think this has to do with outbound, right? The outbound OFWs, the rules they have to follow.
The hiring process.
The hiring process, okay.
Oo. Alam mo, minsan nga sabi ko, hindi ba common sense na lang yun? Kasi you have employers and they own their companies and then you would ask them to go to the embassy, and embassies are usually in the diplomatic quarters. Wala naman yan sa mga commercial areas for
You're
security.
talking about Philippine embassies abroad, right?
Our Philippine embassy. So here's an employer who wants to hire a Filipino worker, and he would have to physically go to the embassy and then just to get yung mga requirements and then come back to submit all these requirements, and then yung accreditation process niya includes not just yung on-site, which means the POLO or the Philippine Office of Overseas Labor Office, kung hindi, POEA. So from POLO, those paper requirements will be sent by courier service or by snail mail to POEA. And then yung POEA naman, may sariling process sila ng evaluation. So I said, we're now one department. Why should the Home Office be evaluating the work of the on-site office? So it's either you trust these people or you don't, di ba? So we would be able to eliminate so many steps. And then sabi ko, why require the employer to keep coming back? That's also, that opens the doors to corruption.
Okay.
Nahirapan pumunta once, hindi pa na-approve.
So,
pupunta ng pangalawa or may dala ng regalo. So, and we don't want to encourage that. So we're thinking, bakit ba hindi e-submission? We learned so much from the pandemic na everything can be done online as long as there are security features involved. So we're now talking to DICT. Okay. Internally, we are reviewing all the steps, pati yung number of signatures.
I see.
And we think that currently it takes 30 days to 90 days.
Wow.
Just to get that accreditation process completed by an employer.
Wow.
And then we want to cut that to 3 weeks or less na time. Yun namang for the OFWs, yung OEC, yung Overseas Employment Certificate. Some of them are able to get lang yung OEC pag nandito while on vacation. So we also are looking at how to make it digital. So they can
while
just,
while they're abroad,
even while waiting for the plane, they can apply na and then download it sa phone. So digital na, sanay na tayo sa QR code
Yes.
So papakita na lang sa airport, sa immigration, QR code na. Then it's stored in the So a lot of those digital processes, we are looking at the kind of solutions that can be applied. Kasi very simple thing.
Yeah.
Hindi mobile phone ready yung mga namin.
Forms.
Mga forms, processes, lahat.
Yeah.
So sabi ko, but OFWs are so used to they're so adept at using their phones.
Yeah.
So ngayon, yun ang transformation that we are after.
And I suppose all of these streamlining will also reduce costs for the OFWs and their families. Is that a correct assumption?
It will reduce costs. Right. It will remove the burden from their shoulders.
And possibly remove the opportunities for corruption.
For graft and corruption. And it will enhance also our data management. Because Well, since everything is stored na, hindi na siya paper.
Right. Everything's
Oo.
digital.
Yes.
You mentioned that in your interview also, that one of the marching orders from the president is that he wanted, correct me if I'm wrong, he wanted to have a database in your department.
Yes.
So what's needed to get that started? You mentioned that you're talking to DICT secretary.
Yes. Well, for DICT, we're talking about ease of doing business strategies. For the data management,
So digitalizing the process.
yes.
Okay.
For the data management, we have to look at the data points that would help us in policy making.
Okay.
And I found out that may kanya-kanya sila. So OWA has its own database, POEA has its own, which is understandable kasi magkaiba yung mandates. But they don't share and they don't talk. So we're looking at how we can harvest information from all these data management systems, and also how can we get a returning OFW to register so that we can connect them with big business. For example, I need a very experienced oil and gas person. Ang dami natin, ang gagaling sa sa Middle East and even Africa, no? So, but the employers here don't know about them, that they're arriving on this day, ganyan. So we want to be able to do that. There's a whole machinery of government geared towards helping those leaving.
Right.
But there's really hardly any presence in government and in policy-wise to help those returning. So we want to be able to do that.
Well, I want to ask more about that, but first we'll need to take a break. This is SMNI's Business and Politics. We're talking to Secretary Ople of the Department of Migrant Workers. We'll be right back.